Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin. Today is a special day. We're interviewing Richard C. Lyons. He's an award-winning author about his latest book, Shadows of the Acropolis. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. It's a Greek, he'll tell you more about it, and how it accesses and contextualizes the current state of American democracy. Richard C. Lyons is an award-winning, critically acclaimed author from the Midwestern United States. Lyons was educated at Loyola Academy and the University of North Texas and Southern Methodist University. Lyons has enjoyed a professional career in printing, publishing, and stage production. The author is also an award-winning screenwriter. Spoiler alert. His books are wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing him. It's because from his discussion, I absolutely want to grab both of these books and read them. And I hope you will too. So we'll do the intro. We're going to go right into it. Richard mid-sentence, because I think I missed out the first minute or so. We're going to be talking about his book and everything behind it. So thanks for tuning in to Hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
Hi, fellow patriots. This is Peter Boykin from Hashtag Go Right. Share this right now. Time to go right. On August 22nd, 2022, Lyons released the follow-up to The DNA of Democracy, the book I can pronounce, the first volume in his highly regarded Shadows of the Acropolis. And I think it's Acropolis. It's a good book series, which won a Nautilus Book Award, a National Indie Excellence Award, and placed as a finalist for the International Book Award. Lyons examines critical, contentious elections occurring this fall and in 2024 in an atmosphere of unprecedented political upheaval. Multi-award-winning author and political commentator Richard C. Lyons examines what it truly means in the present condition of our democracy. There's going to be links in the post. This is a pre-recorded interview. We tried to go live, but I had a little bit of audio issues. Apologize. And I am editing this to the best that I can to make sure you still enjoy a quality interview. And this was a great interview. And I got to tell you, folks, spoiler alert, his books are wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because I'm interviewing him.
And how all those ideas merged into our country. And how it formed our country, along with our idea of the confederation between the states, or the union between the states as we now have it. But the Confederacy that we originally had, the Articles of the Confederacy, as they were when we fought the Revolution, were based on the Iroquois Confederacy in Northeast America.
Nice. So you're talking about like when we had the Civil War, per se, for the Confederacy?
Yes. It follows through from Athens to Rome to Britain and these are all episodic stories. They are all short narratives to describe the signal points where persons rebelled and became a democracy. Right? And then it carries on in America and how we rebelled against Britain and became a democracy.
Absolutely. I try to tell people, it's like we have to be careful before we just basically end up going backwards and we become Britain, you know?
There are remarkable similarities between the way the British treated us before the Revolution, right before the Revolution, and how we're being treated today. That is where Shadows of the Acropolis comes in. This is a history of American politics for the last 100 years, and how we have shifted from our origins to being more governed by an administrative state than by our own representatives.
Yeah, I'll have a problem. You know, I noticed that instead of people being representative of, hired and put in as a representative, they tend to only represent the people who have the money. You know, there's so much money in politics.
Yeah.
Per se, it's like you forget that you're a representative of all the people, and I'm big on we the people. Means everybody. Means you've got a job as a representative, not just the Republicans, not just the Democrats. Your job is to represent everybody, and that's what I try to gently remind people, and sometimes forcefully remind people, is that we're slipping into what every other place falls. We're a grand experiment. We're always changing. But I'm worried, will we fall like Rome and everywhere else because we're just leading down the same path?
Well, it is, and I chronicle it in Shadows of the Acropolis. We're becoming a more centralized government in one city in the country, and the amount of power exerted from there. The Shadows of the Acropolis is a chronicle of how power is passed from our local governments, which are based on democracy, and our state governments, and are all going up to the federal level. All the powers of the country are going up to the federal level, and therein they are being stowed in one branch of government. That's the presidency. And so when we come to presidential elections, it is no wonder that half the country, no matter who the president is that is elected, half the country is angry as hell because it's an all or nothing game now.
Yeah, we have become a divided nation, because everybody's passionate in one way or the other. And to me, sometimes that really comes to, it's like this whole competitive nature when you watch sports. Everybody plays sports and everybody gets to the point where they got to be on this side or that side, and it becomes this huge thing. I mean, recently here was it Tennessee? Afterwards they took to the field, tore down the goals, ran them to the ocean, and it's like that kind of passion, can just as easily be an opposite passion. Imagine the other side gets down to the field, rips down the goal posts and sets the stadium on fire. And that's kind of what people scared of when it came to January 6th or other things, because of the sheer power of the mob and what can happen, and we're only one, like I say, we're only one generation, we're only one day behind pure chaos. And the best thing it's kind of what I try to do is I fight extremism on both ends, and I try to keep people more on the middle and to understand that we need to go by the Constitution, and the Constitution didn't have a right or left. The Constitution, came for all of us and defends all of us, regardless of our opinions. And when it comes to opinions, nobody's right. Nobody's right.
You make some very good points. I would say this: the country used to be, say even 70 years ago, the country was agreed on certain things. Let's use your football analogy. We agreed on everything between the 40-yard lines, right?
Right.
And within 40-yard lines, one party and the other, right? That's where the contest was. But we agreed on the Constitution. We agreed on the Bill of Rights. We agreed on free enterprise at that time. Those were the basics that everybody agreed on, right? So
excellent. Yeah.
Now we have a party that doesn't believe so much in those things. They believe that justice can be gotten only outside the Constitution. If certain persons act, namely the executive, outside the Constitution to effect a superior justice, whereas the entire construct of the Constitution was to create justice. by having everybody have their representation, everybody have their vote to create a better country.
Yeah, I tell you, it's like when I think their first ones were the people who got the most representation. I think at first was the landowners. You know, they were pretty much were the ones that got the representation. And they kind of opened it up to everybody getting representation. And it's good and bad because you've got people who are more involved, I guess, in society, who own businesses and things like that can really shape America. But yet you have the masses of people who might not exactly vote the best way or get the best representation that helps America. So we run into situations here in like North Carolina, Virginia, where the whole state can be like basically conservative, except for you got these very dense cities full of, you know, individuals who, a lot of them live off the government and stuff like that, and there's nothing wrong with it, but they might not necessarily vote what's good for America, but instead they're voting what's good for just them. And sadly, you can take a state that's like very conservative, and one city, that's what happens in Virginia a lot, one city like Arlington or something like that, you know, one city dictates for everybody else. And it's kind of the same thing when it comes to, like you say, the president. The president is a representative of the Republican or a Democrat, but they also forget to represent everybody at the end of the day. And I think, like, kind of what you're saying, circumventing, I see the circumventing of executive orders by all presidents instead of going through the wrong way. We can't even get into it. We're not even supposed to get in wars without getting Congress involved. And now it seems presidents just get us in wars and circumvent the Congress. Everybody's guilty of it.
Yeah, that's the main thrust of Shadows of the Acropolis. It is how the different branches of government are not abiding by the Constitution. So you have, let's take some symptoms today, some circumstances today. For Joe Biden himself, as a single person, as a president, to take $500 billion of debt from the debtors and putting it on the shoulders of taxpayers is something that the executive branch, by the Constitution, is disallowed from doing. Anything having to do with money has to be done in the House of Representatives, not in the executive branch. So he's trying in his own office to do the office of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
435 representatives don't matter. One man does. And so he can shift that debt. Now, where do we have another symptom going on right now today? Joe Biden is the executor of the laws, right? That's his job. And another job is to defend the country as commander-in-chief. And yet we have a southern border that is wide open. So we have a president who's not doing the function he's supposed to be doing as the executive in executing the laws and doing the job of Congress, which he's not supposed to do. This is the problem we're having nowadays. And the greater problem is you have an administrative state that has grown for a century in this country, and they are now making more laws than the representatives of our country do through agency rules that have the effect of laws. So that the executive branch of the government is alone creating more law. During the Obama era, there was over 20,000 rules made by agencies. During the same 8 years, only 400 laws, a little over 400 laws, passed the legislature through the House, the Senate, and the president signed it. It's remarkable how few laws are created now through the proper process as writ in the Constitution.
Kind of like they added the Fed, and they treat the Fed like it's a fourth level of our government when it's not really supposed to be there.
When you go to this book, that's one of the first things done by Woodrow Wilson. He is the founder of the administrative state, and he founded the Fed and arbitrarily set interest rates from that point forward. It's part of what created the Great Depression. It's part of what has created every financial bubble and crash this country has suffered since.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the stock market as far as I'm concerned. Rich
if it
people.
were
I'm not a big fan of the stock market because honestly, I've seen what happens. I've gone into places before and they literally have computer systems there that know the predictive model of how stocks go up and down, and they literally sell stocks and they manipulate the whole stock market. Just, if you got $1 million, you can buy, sell pennies or whatever, and they make money off of manipulating, the market. It's not even a free market. It's just manipulated by computer programs at this point. And it's all about riding that wave.
You're right. That's a perversion.
Yeah, I just don't like it. It's to me, I mean, stock market, is a good thing for some people, but we've had, 2 major crashes that caused depression in America, I believe. One, kind of close to the second one, it's a very dangerous thing.
Do you remember 2008? What happened in 2008? Because that's another really good example.
Remind me. There's a lot of history has been going on in my life.
What happened is that the federal government came up with a policy that banks had to provide loans to persons who could not afford them in order to help people.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Okay, so then they took all the bad loans were then packaged and sold on the stock market as hedge funds. And because they had no real value, and their value was perverted, so it caused a crisis in the entire financial system. But there again, you're talking about the federal government creating rules for banks that banks would not come up with on their own if it were a free enterprise system. So It's again too much power in the federal government to dictate to financial players.
Oh yeah, I mean they definitely. It's both sides are guilty on it. Some a little bit more than the other, but it's all manipulating us, and that's why I think there's so many people becoming unaffiliated now because they see this. Sadly, they're seeing there is like a uniparty. At the end of the day, it's just a business. We're just the pawns. We don't feel. A lot of people don't feel free. The election system was so big this last time around because if you notice around the world, once an election system becomes where you feel like it's not actually your vote, those countries start failing. Those countries have revolutions. Those countries fail. And that's how it's very important for us to get our voting system back on track.
Yes, I would remind that in the Constitution it points out that each state legislature is supposed to determine the how about voting and the how about tabulating the vote. Yep. State legislatures are supposed to do that. No other body.
Now,
it is not federal. It is not a federal function.
Yeah.
It is a state function.
Well, I always thought, I always agreed with that, but there was only one thing that I would say that might be different when it comes to the presidential vote. The presidential vote, personally, I think should be a completely separate ballot, a completely separate box. It should be protected by our National Guard and a citizen. There should be a huge chain of custody. And to me, it should be across the board because it's such a federal position. It's the only one that really is federal, per se, that position, that it kind of makes no sense to me that this state has this rule, that state has that rule, this state can do these absentee ballots, and that's what causes problems.
I have to differ with you because it is the most important office. It should not be left to the federal government to determine it. It should be determined by the 50 states, so it's not, you can't manipulate it in Washington, D.C. That is the danger foreseen in the Constitution and why every state legislature is supposed to govern that vote.
Yeah. I don't know. The only thing I can see is that it would be nice if we all had a consistent voting period and process, at least for that.
We used to.
Yeah, because you got one state that allows absentee and the other state doesn't, and then this one lets you have 4 or a month worth of early voting. This one only gives you a week. It's just, to me, I understand each legislature is able to establish their own rules, but what happens is one state can end up dictating everything else. That's why it's very important us to continue with the electoral voting system, because if we didn't have the electoral voting system, then California could decide it, or Florida could decide it. One major state could end up deciding it for all, which is what happens in, like say Virginia, where one city dictates the whole state, even though almost the 99% of the state votes this way, and that one giant conglomerate gets to be the deciding factor, and that happens too many times, and really causing us problems here in North Carolina, how you divide our party lines and our districts and everything, because of the, everybody live in cities or counties, and there's less people in counties, more people in the cities, and you have to split the votes up, but yeah, states absolutely have the right to decide, especially for everything else. I might disagree a little bit when it comes to the presidential thing, but I'm sure there's some compromise in there somewhere. Of course, we don't want the federal government to have too much power on it. Maybe it could be a deciding factor of all the states getting together and, and saying, okay, we all agree to these rules.
Yeah, I preferred it when it was, one day of voting.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would absolutely be nice. I only vote on election day. I think election day should be it should be a national holiday. I don't think anybody should go to work on that day, honestly. And you should go to vote. That's your job. You, as an American citizen, should vote. Period. That's
right.
The one thing you have, and it should be absolutely open for you to vote. You should have just no work on that day. I think everything should be closed as far as I'm concerned. Vote. That's the only thing you can do today out of once every 2 years. Vote. We want you to vote. If we got 100% people voting, I'm not saying we punish people for not going to vote, but our point is to get as many people to vote as possible. And
agreed. Yeah, the shenanigans of ballot box stuffing and things like this. It's not.
I mean, they had that 2,000 mules. They showed, it got me. How do you have literally a mailbox on the street, an unmanned mailbox that anybody could throw chemicals in? They could stuff. They can do whatever they want anywhere, and people did. And then you try to take those ballots, and we're in such a fast food, kind of we need to know who's president right away kind of mode that kind of stuff goes through. And then when we have doubt, the media, everybody else basically keeps us from being able to talk about it. The day after the election, every single pro-Trump group, we were all given 30-day bans where we could not communicate with the people in our group, just to help continue the steal.
But let's go back a little bit. All the ballot box stuffing that was done in states where they disregarded the state legislature rules as to voting and went around them to allow for ballot stuffing. So there again, if you follow the Constitution and that the state legislatures alone determine the process of the vote in their states, we'd be better off.
I totally agree with you that. So as a citizen, like we talked about, you pretty much don't feel like you're being correctly represented right now. I kind of feel like the same thing.
Yes, you have, rather than having 50 states and you have the majority of laws being formed in those states, you now have a massive government in one city where the administrative state is comprised of, just the administrative state alone, is comprised of over 400 agencies, each of them writing rules with the effect of laws. And it runs into the thousands of rules per year. And then you have 184 welfare, what would you call it? Welfare agencies, 184, devoted to taking money from some people and then distributing it to other people in this country. And it's rather grotesque how far away we've come from the original design of the country.
Kind of reminds me of the old guy when I grew up. He run around in a Riddler outfit and sell you that book that told you about how different ways you can get money from the government. You know, it's like, come on, there's different ways, there's different programs you can get money for this and money for that. They always talk about every bill has a little tack on, and they always talk about how politicians make so much money.
There's an application for having your college debt canceled, right? You get an application form, and you have to dutifully fill it out. It's $10,000 or $20,000. But I would recommend to no one in your audience that they put down that they're a Republican, because the application will be accepted.
Well,
that's the problem with the country.
Well, I know that they're using like the IRS to audit people. Ever since I got political, I have gotten audited every single year. Every single year.
There is a chapter in this book which goes back to when Barack Obama and his IRS were auditing all the Tea Party groups, and then expanded that.
That's when it started. That's when it started for me. Since 2016 or so, they have audited every single year, to the point where I wait to the last minute to make sure that I have every single document that I need, which they send way late, to make sure I still fill in my taxes properly. I do electronic. I go through all the steps and all the checks and balances, and somehow they still come back and audit me on something, because they're just trying to financially damage people.
Such an agency should not be predatory, let alone politicized and predatory.
They want to give them weapons and bullets and everything now. That's scary.
I heard that. I wonder about that.
Yeah, it's you trying to make an army out of the IRS? Like, I think
we need an army on the border. There again, it's a dysfunction in the country. We have nobody guarding our border, but we'll have an IRS the size of an army attacking us.
I mean, they want to ignore the border. They won't even go to the border. Kamala Harris ignores and laughs at the border. You have.
Well, there probably isn't a Four Seasons down there for her to stay at. I think she demands that. Private jets, Four Seasons hotels.
To me, one of the biggest things I have on some of the talking points that I've put out is I want to have a 25 year moratorium on immigration, period. Case by case basis. Nobody. Nobody.
I think until we know what country we are, I think it's a good idea to stop immigration.
And what gets me is now recently in the news they said that the people that they sent over there to Martha's Vineyard, now a Texas judge has realized that they should get a provincial visa to have American citizens because their rights got violated. I'm like, wait a minute. When you're not here legally to begin with, you have no rights. You have no legal counsel. As far as I'm concerned, we should be dropping them right back where they came from to begin with. Period. We don't have any room. And then we are taking people in here.
Well, they have Martha's Vineyard, I guess.
Well, there you go. I mean, we're taking people in here at droves. We have no jobs here because we've sent our jobs everywhere. We have no factories like we had before. And then we're sending billions of dollars to other countries. It doesn't matter what country it is. I know right now the flavor of the month is Ukraine. Good or bad, how you decide it. It's kind of scary where every 50 senators voted yes to send money. We sent $12 billion recently, another $1 billion. I know you were talking about how Joe Biden was helping out the student loan things, and that's been a real gripe to people. People really argued. I argued with that, and stuff. But I was saying, well, where are you? You're arguing about helping American citizens possibly with that, but yet you have no problem sending billions to another country. That's what bothers me the most.
Well, the problem with removing the debt some people have is that other persons paid off their debts.
Oh, I agree.
Now they have to pay taxes for other people who didn't. And, that would make me hopping mad.
It might be easier. It might be easier to just say, look, we all went through hell. Like even with the whole COVID, they gave people who were unemployed, a lot of them unemployed, no right their money, but then the people who continue to work, they got nothing. And it was kind of like a favoritism kind of thing. It's like if you're going to help all the American citizens, help all the American citizens, cut everybody a check. We're all
Yeah.
going to end up paying for it in the long run anyway. Then again, with cryptocurrency and NFTs and stuff, to me, I've gotten really cynical about money in general, because if cryptocurrency is basically money and made out of thin air, NFTs is what you're going to pay for a picture, a meme that I can copy and paste all day long just so you can say you have the rights to it. It to me, it's like almost money is just backed up by the faith that we put behind it, period. And it kind of doesn't matter when we get to how much we get in debt anymore.
That's very true, and it's a real problem. You're voicing a lot of the troubles that we're having in the country these days, and it's very frustrating.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gotten to the point where people are not so concerned. I mean, I worry, people worry about places like China, or China's going to attack. I'm like, yeah, but I tell people, it's like, are they? Their whole society is built on what we owe them, what they owe us. They would fall if they even tried to mess with us. So I'm not really worried about China. Russia. Am I worried about Russia launching a nuclear weapon? Not really. I mean, the nuclear fallout would go right back in their face. That would be stupid. And if they want the area so bad, why would they nuke it? It makes no sense. It'd be like, I'm gonna blow this up because you won't let me play with it. I'm gonna take your toy and destroy it because you won't let me play with it. That it kind of defeats the purpose. It's just idle threats. Just idle threats. Trump saw through that. Sadly, Biden is like, sad. As I don't even dislike Biden because he's a Democrat. I dislike Biden because he's just horrible. He's just a horrible person, and he's a horrible leader.
I just like him because his family's a bunch of crooks.
That too. That doesn't help. I mean, I'll gladly say Biden has got a lot of problems. His family's got a lot of problems. Legitimate problems. And I'm so tired of the double standard going on in this world, where just today they're talking about recommending 6 months for Stephen Bannon for not wanting to talk to a committee that should have never existed, that really doesn't have any power, but they want to send him to jail for 6 months. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden's hopping on Air Force One, probably with a suitcase full of cocaine. But that's okay.
That's the situation.
That's just what people need to understand. We are under that microscope.
Pete, that takes us back to what we used to all agree on. Part of what we used to all agree on was the Constitution, and another thing was equal justice and the presumption of innocence. If you're a Republican nowadays, you don't enjoy equal justice, and you don't enjoy the presumption of innocence.
No, we don't.
That is, if you're a successful conservative.
Yeah, they'll do everything to shut you down. I'm glad that social media is kind of coming around. We'll have Elon Musk probably own Twitter now. We got Kanye West, of all people, are going to be on Parler. We got a guy owning Gab. I can't remember that guy's name. Meanwhile, Zuckerberg's like the only one with Facebook. Kind of, and even he is like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. I'm the only guy around. What am I supposed to do? He doesn't want to become Tom from MySpace. Tom from MySpace never banned people. If everybody could just look up to Tom, and we can go back to. But there's so much laws that the government really needs to look into because of whole technology changing. There's things that need to be explored. There's that whole point of First Amendment rights. Does it extend to our online presence? Which I know people complain about it being businesses, but to me, you're still operating on the telecommunication wires. Ma Bell was not able to shut us down. The telephone companies can't shut us down for being what we are or how we talk. So why should social media be able to? They're now a graphical user interface of the original telephone when it comes to spreading whatever. So we need to be able to talk. And if we stop one way one side gets to talk and the other side doesn't get to talk, I think, like you said, we really perpetuate that violence on both ends. This whole United States society will shut down. People have to discuss. It's called diplomacy. When diplomacy shuts down, what's next? War.
The first part of what you were saying involves something else we all agreed on at one point, and that was property rights. And so when you're talking about new media, it makes sense to extend property rights. We are our first property, right? Your person is.
Yep.
And your image should be. And there should be extensions of yourself that are protected like private property. I think that's what you're getting to.
Yeah. I mean, like Facebook. Facebook invites you to create a page about yourself or your persona or your business. Next thing you know, they don't like what you said, they kick you off. But your page still stays up, your persona still stays up, but you no longer have access to it. And that can hurt your business and hurt you. And if they label you as something bad or prevent you from being able to do stuff, then they're really actually financially hurting you at that point. So I don't see where people can't just sue for that. What are people talking about with Alex Jones? They want to shut him down for his conspiracy theories or whatever, or $1 billion here, but one minute we're not supposed to take him for a grain of salt because he's just a conspiracy theory, and on the other hand, he's so bad that we have to give him, we get awarded $1 billion because how bad he is. It's so much variables out there that really need to be concentrated on. And meanwhile, the government is spending their time on an event, one stupid event, January 6th, where they just basically should have had more police presence. They knew it. Trump knew they were going to have stuff. He signed off everything that they needed to do. It was Nancy Pelosi's. She was the one that's supposed to be in charge of protecting the Capitol, and they had no protection because they set people up. They wanted it to happen. So whose fault really is it? They ignored the whole year where the whole city was literally set on fire. It was occupied by people and destroyed, and people were actually got killed during that year beforehand. But did they do anything? They didn't do anything. But they freaked out because a handful of people came, 1 million people showed up, pissed off. A few people entered the building. Guess what? For property damage? Did we destroy art? Did we set the building on fire? No, the worst thing we did was we moved the podium. Somebody got on a telephone, and we joked. They broke a couple of glasses. Nobody was really going to get hurt. There was, in any group, you have one or two extreme people out of millions that probably wanted to really do some harm. But in reality, all people did was walk around a building. There was a family that just got in trouble. Looks like the best family trip they'd probably ever have in their lives. They got to go in the Capitol that they couldn't go in for years because they shelled it off because of COVID. And they got to see the Capitol, but then now they get in trouble because they're like, oh, we shouldn't have been in there, I was there on January 6th, but I didn't enter the Capitol because that, to me, that's like, no, you don't do that. The place is closed. But I stood outside, peacefully yelled at a building, and then left when they told us we had to leave because things were really bad.
Yeah. I'm not very well educated on what happened that day. So
nobody really knows exactly what happened that day. I was there and I didn't even know everything that happened that day. So when they try to say Trump knew everything that happened that day, I know he didn't. I was on ground zero and I didn't know what was going on. There was zero internet because there was too much going on. I didn't know anything until a couple of days later, and I realized that people had entered the building, and I remember on one side they were scaling the building and getting up there and climbing the wall and acting crazy and fighting the cops and shooting tear gas, and I remember walking to the other side just as calm as can be. Everybody's just standing, being careful. And then what's funny is they had the side open from the back patio where everybody was climbing up the walls. You literally can go to the other side and just walk around that way and walk onto the patio. So it's like you've got people trying to keep people out on one side, and the other side, the border's wide open. So, but then again, the left has no no real experience on how keeping borders, keeping people out.
I know someone else who was there that day. I was not. But they said they never heard that anything happened.
Yeah, while I was there, they gave us the alarm. I left. Apparently everything must have happened after I left. I'm glad I left because I didn't think it was going to be like that. I was documented. I had a film crew following me. I've had the January 6th send me a subpoena for my text records. They
Really?
wanted to informally talk to me, but I never answered them back because if they really want to talk to me, send me a subpoena. Send me an FBI agent here and I'll talk to you. But obviously nothing that I say will be exactly what they want. It'll go against their narrative because I had a peaceful rally right there at Union Square, just welcoming people in as they came in, and all I did was tell people, we're here in numbers, and the best we can do is just be here to show our disapproval, but let's keep it peaceful. Let's really keep it peaceful.
Oh, good for you.
So it upset me that it got as bad as it was, but that's what happens in mobs. It happened in the Democrat or Republican. When that many people get together, it doesn't matter. Intentions, good intentions, bad things happen, period.
Well, I would just point this out that some 200 cities that year were set aflame, and one party of government only thinks about one.
Well, think about Seattle, Chaz. So where's the Republican committee that is doing a thing on Chaz? They literally took over the city. You talk about real insurrection. They took over the city and attacked the mayor.
I know somebody that literally moved away from Seattle because of what has happened there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
all these I regard as, bringing it back around to a full circle, all of these things that we're talking about are what I would call symptoms, but it's a single disease. It is the over-centralization of power in Washington, D.C., and the overgrowth of government. A lot of people are frustrated about it. All have a single cause. It's too much power in one place.
Absolutely. So just to wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to talk about before we go? And tell me a little bit about how you can get your book and what else your future plans possibly are.
Well, again, there's two books. There's one, The DNA of Democracy, which goes into how our country was created, right? And then the second one is how our country has changed over the past 100 years. They're both available at Amazon or at retail outlets or at richardclyons.com. We operate a shop that's very secure.
I absolutely got to get these books. I think I told you before, I'm not a huge book person, but I really like this. Kind of goes up my alley. It would definitely help me a whole lot of understanding things that I really go for, because I'm a constitutionalist before any party, and so I'm really all about trying to get us back on track.
If you want to know the how and why of how this country was formed, that's in the DNA of Democracy. If you want to know the how and why of how it has changed in the past 100 years, that's in Shadow of the Acropolis.
Sounds to me like your books are right up my alley.
Well, go and grab one.
Definitely will.
I really appreciate it.
Well, I thank you for tuning in. Is there any links or anything you'd like to provide?
Just richardclyons.com.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, thank you for having you on.
Okay. Thanks very much, Pete.
You're welcome. You have a great day.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Go Right with Peter Boykin. Please like this post, and please subscribe and follow and share this podcast to all your social media accounts, and visit GoRightNews.com for more Go Right News with Peter Boykin. If you like what you hear, help support the podcast by donating. The link to donate is on GoRightNews.com. Thank you for your support.
Check out this news story and more on GoRightNews.com and the podcast #GoRight with Peter Boykin.
Go right and register to vote. Your vote matters, so vote. Go right and vote. #GoRight. Go right, do right, be right. Go right, do right, be right. Lead right, think right, vote right, think right, lead right. Hashtag go right.
It's time to join the Go Right movement. It is time to hashtag Go Right for America. Join us at goright.us and gorightnews.com. It is time for the Great American Revival, and it is time to hashtag Go Right for America.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening to this, and please share it everywhere. Again, this has been hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin, a part of gorightnews.com.